or focus on the great shames in history, it would defeat the purpose for which government mandates that this be taught. The reason we teach history is to indoctrinate children in being good Americans in public school history, being good Jews in Hebrew school history. That's why it's taught. That's the purpose of it. Now there must be, only one history teacher in the room that I saw a hand, but there must be parameters that school systems or even private schools set to what you're allowed to teach. So if a teacher decides, you know what? I want to teach you how to be better people and better Americans. So the only thing I'm going to teach you is, during the American Revolution, the massacres that occurred of settlements of Native Americans. I'm going to teach you about the Indian reservations. I'm going to teach you about how foolish Vietnam was. I'm going to teach you how we were witch hunting for communists. I'm going to teach you everything wrong. They're not going to work too long. And hand is up.
I would like to bring back to something that you mentioned before, that the kings, when they became kings, they had certain obligations and certain matters. One of them was reading the Torah. They were supposed to have...
And writing one.
Yeah. Well, now with all that, each king was supposed to study it and read it and have it available. How come, as Milton Berle was said, with so many beautiful brides, how come we have so many ugly wives? How come that with every king reading the Torah, we had so many idolaters?
A king had to write his own Torah. Some say just the book of Deuteronomy. Others say he had to write a whole Sefer Torah of his own in his kingship. Now, the most evil of all kings that is recorded for us in the book of prophets in 2 Kings is Menashe. Menashe was just the worst. He destroyed Torah learning. He killed Torah scholars. He was terrible. And he's terrible in the Midrash and in the text. Menashe probably just never observed these laws, as he dispensed with a lot. There is an interesting way, however, that through the eyes of the Midrash, we perceive of another king, Ahab. Ahab was very evil, and also very righteous. Ahab was very learned, and very well versed in the Torah. Ahab, it is said, in the Midrash, had an equal amount of vice and virtue, so that the scales were exactly balanced. And the Midrash says both scales weighed heavy. He did terrible, evil things, and he did great, righteous things. What does it mean, terrible, evil, and great, righteous? Great, righteous, he was a great Baal Tzedakah. He was also a great, brave champion. In other words, his leading Israel in war was considered to his virtue, that he did it to protect his people and to further their interests. Here is one of the great vices that he had, or that he allowed. Now remember, when you're a king, all you have to do is allow something, because you're the king. So if you allowed it knowingly, then that is participating in the evil. His wife was Jezebel, and she coveted a vineyard that was adjacent to the royal estates that belonged to a man named Navot. Navot would not sell to her, so she concocted a scheme wherein Navot was falsely accused of a capital offense, for which he would not only be executed, but his property would be forfeit to the state, the monarchy, the crown. She paid off false witnesses and had a kangaroo court and all of that, went through the proceedings, had Navot executed, and took the vineyard. Ahab knew all about it and allowed it to happen, so he is blamed as if he had done this unrighteous murder himself. Let's see now, what happens? On the day of his death, the Midrash says that the text at the end of 1 Kings just says he goes into battle against Aram, an arrow hits him as he's riding his chariot, he falls, he dies. That's the end, as predicted by Elisha, Elijah's disciple. The Midrash tells us of his metaphysical circumstances of his death, that God sends the Malach HaMavet, the angel of death, to go collect Ahab's soul. It's time for him to die. And the angel of death comes back from the journey, says, I can't. Why not? His soul is too awesome. He's too great a man. His evil deeds are so evil, but his good deeds are so righteous. I can't stand up to him. I can't collect his soul. I can't reave it for you. So God now in the Midrash asks his other angels to go. No one will do it. He asks his archangels, Michael and Uziel and those folks. No one can do it. And now we have the one instance of the crossover of concept of spirit and angel. which is the dead spirit of Navot in heaven approaches God and says, if you empower me, I'll do it. And the spirit of Navot in the Midrash is then sent to earth. Ahab stands up to the spirit and says, I'm Ahab. I'm the great king, the Baal Tzedakah, the champion in war. And Navot just says, I'm not impressed. My soul cries out for justice. And he takes Ahab's soul.
Or revenge?
Justice. Soul for a soul. Soul for a soul. That is definitely for a different class. that is a whole, there is, in terms of morals and ethics, that would be a wonderful class just to see the development biblically, Talmudically, and in modern writings of what is the difference and what is the overlap. Yes?
Is it possible, in view of what you just said about the parameters of teaching history, all other people's writings would have nationalistic tones to them?
They sure do.
They would have ideas there that would impress people with morals and ethics and so on of their societies.
Morals and ethics were not considered impressive in the ancient world.
But
victory was. Success was evidence of divine favor.
Our writings show the failings of people, specifically maybe to teach morals and ethics.
We brought a revolution in thought and behavior to humankind. Last time we spoke about many analogies, and there are many analogies. And the epic of Gilgamesh is Breshit. It's the same story of creation. You separate, put an Enlil for Elohim and all of that. You have the same story. Our revolution is in the behavioral realm rather than originally in theology. Though we've been revolutionary theologically over the millennia, originally that's the breach, that's the big thing. That's what the Torah has that no one else has. That God cares when the poor person suffers. That God is most concerned with our fair weights and measures and not with our rituals and sacrifices. That is a revolutionary attitude that no one else seems to express. But understand, I don't think that superior morals and ethics were considered the least bit impressive in the ancient world, or even in the classical world. In the classical world, you have, it is unclear as to where the concept of morality is springing from. Less from religion and more from the concept of citizenship. In other words, a good citizen has fair weights and measures and is honest and deals fairly, and you might be charitable, and there might have been some higher ideals creeping in there. But they're being transient and spiritual obligations was purely in the Jewish realm. Nobody else had that yet. And they all got it from us.
But by making it part of a religion,
yes,
religion in general was something that people did more or less because they may have been afraid. This is a different head, and it's a head that's hard for us to get into, because for the last 500 years, let's say, and certainly for the last 100 very intensely, religion, in the house that is our life, religion has been a room. Some people it's a big room, some people it's a small room, some people it's the kitchen, some people it's the living room, but it's a room. In the ancient world, religion was the building. It was the whole building. Everything was about religion. War, eating, sex, politics. All of these things were parts of religion. Entertainment. All of these things were religious. Your belonging to, your concept of the city that you belonged to, which was your nation, your political entity, had to do with the deity that was the patron or patroness or matron of that locale. And the king was the divinely ordained representative of it, and the high priest, and all of this, and everything was, religion was your life. It was not really, there was not a separate compartment. And we only start to compartmentalize it really already in the Middle Ages, but making it clearly a room in the house from the time, say, of the Enlightenment, the last half millennium. And the last century, a shrinking room it is. Yes?
This is what they have in Iran, the Khomeini. Everything goes around the religion.
That is what fundamentalism is, what they're trying to do. That's why ultimately I don't think this can endure in modernity. There is something about the post-industrial world that it does not allow
for, prolonged